Welcome back to another evening of ancient tales. Tonight, we journey to a god unlike any other, one even the Olympians despised. Among all the deities of ancient Greece, there was one whose own father called him the most hateful of gods. His name was Ares, the god of war, not honored war, not strategic victory, but the screaming, bleeding, brutal chaos of battle itself. Can you see him? Ares lived for the clash of bronze on bronze, the war cries of dying men, the glory of destruction without purpose or meaning. Where his sister Athena brought wisdom to conflict, Ares brought only madness. Where she sought victory, he craved violence for its own sake. The mortals prayed to him out of fear, never love. They sacrificed before battles, begging him to torment their enemies instead of themselves. Even his parents could not love him. Zeus, king of the gods, looked upon his son with contempt that echoed through the ages. Only Hera, queen of Olympus, held any tenderness for her war-mad son, a mother's love, fierce and protective, never fading. This was the paradox of Ares, a god of battle who lost more fights than he won, divine power wrapped in endless humiliation. Mortals wounded him, giants imprisoned him, his own family mocked him, yet still he raged, still he fought, still he yearned. What drove him? Perhaps the desperate hope that one victory, one moment of glory, would finally earn his father's respect. Tonight, we will walk with this unloved god through his greatest shames and his deepest loves. Feel the weight of his story. See now, his chariot descends from the heavens, pulled by 4 horses whose manes burn with eternal flame. The ground trembles. Phobos and Deimos, fear and terror, ride beside their father, his own children, born of his union with the goddess of love. Where Ares passes, courage fails, strong men flee, heroes falter, war becomes not glory but pure animal survival. This is his gift to humanity, not victory, but the truth of violence. The screaming, bleeding, weeping truth that war brings. Come with me now into the myths of Ares. We shall witness his imprisonment, his forbidden love, his endless cycle of defeat. Let the ancient Greeks tell us why even gods can be tragic. Let their stories carry you gently into the night ahead. To understand Ares, we must first know his nature. He was not merely violent, he was violence itself given divine form and endless hunger. Where other gods ruled domains, the sea, the sky, the harvest, Ares ruled the moment when spear meets flesh and men become beasts. His armor was forged in the fires of conflict itself. Blood-red bronze that seemed to drink the light and hunger for more. 2 sons accompanied him always, Deimos and Phobos. Terror and fear made flesh, born from his union with Aphrodite herself. Phobos brought the panic that breaks armies. The cold sweat, the trembling hands, the sudden certainty that death approaches without mercy. Deimos was worse. The dread that comes before battle, the sleepless nights, the knowledge that tomorrow you may not see the sun again. Together, this terrible family rode into every war the ancient world would know. Where they passed, courage died and madness bloomed. His chariot was pulled by 4 immortal horses whose very breath was flame. Aethon, Phologios, Konobos, and Phobos, fire, blaze, tumult, and fear. Vultures circled wherever Ares walked, his sacred birds, patient scavengers waiting for the feast that war would always provide. In the wild lands of Thrace, far from golden Olympus, Ares built his palace. A fortress of black stone where weapons covered every wall. Here he retreated between battles, surrounded by trophies of 1,000 wars. Helmets of fallen kings, swords of defeated heroes, shields shattered in glory. But even in his sanctuary, Ares could not escape what tormented him most. The knowledge that his father despised his very existence. Zeus, king of all Olympus, had fathered many children, heroes and gods, monsters and maidens. But Ares he could never love. The Sky Father saw in Ares everything he loathed. Chaos without purpose, destruction without creation, power wielded only to harm. Once, when Ares came wounded and weeping to his father, Zeus spoke words that would echo through eternity with their cruelty. Most hateful to me are you of all the gods who hold Olympus. Zeus thundered. Forever is strife dear to you, and wars and battles. The other gods heard. They always heard. And in their eyes Ares saw not sympathy, but satisfaction. Even relief that they were not him. Yet Zeus did not cast him out. Even hatred has its uses, and war would always come. The gods needed their monster. Hera, queen of the gods, watched her son suffering with a mother's breaking heart. She had borne Ares, and she alone would defend him. In the private chambers of Olympus, away from Zeus' judgment, Hera would tend to Ares' wounds, both physical and deeper still. "You are my son," she would whisper. "Whatever he says, whatever they think, you are mine, and I am proud of your strength." Perhaps that love sustained him. Perhaps it made the rejection worse, knowing he could be loved, but only by one. Feel that loneliness. But Ares was not merely Hera's child. Both Zeus and Hera claimed him, making him pure-blooded Olympian, and thoroughly unwanted by both the king and court. Among his divine siblings, one stood as his eternal opposite, Athena, daughter of Zeus alone, born from his very mind, his most beloved child. Athena was also a goddess of war, but war transformed, strategy over slaughter, victory with purpose, conflict as the last resort, not the first joy. Where Ares reveled in the chaos of melee, Athena saw battles as puzzles to solve with minimal bloodshed. Two philosophies at eternal war. They fought together rarely, opposed each other often. In the Trojan War, Athena would guide the Greek who wounded Ares himself. The Greeks prayed to Athena before battle for wisdom to win. They prayed to Ares only, that he would torment their enemies more than themselves. Even in the tales mortals told, Ares lost to Athena. Again and again, cunning defeated rage, wisdom overcame fury, the daughter triumphed over the son. Why did Zeus love her and loathe him? Perhaps because she was born of his will alone, while Ares reminded him too much of his own darker nature. Ares embodied what Zeus wielded, but pretended to transcend. The thunderbolt's violence, the storm's destruction, the chaos that underlies all order. But in the complexity of divine hearts, Ares found something Zeus would never expect. The god of war found love. Aphrodite, goddess of love, beauty, desire. She who could make any heart yearn. She was married to another, but her heart chose the brutal god of war. She was wed to Hephaestus, the lame smith god, a marriage arranged by Zeus himself. Beauty chained to the forge, never to the battlefield. Hephaestus was kind, brilliant, patient, and utterly unable to excite her. He built her wonders. She dreamed of fire. Some say opposites attract. Perhaps Aphrodite, who represented love's gentleness, could not resist love's violence in Ares' burning eyes. Their affair began in stolen moments. A glance across the divine halls, a touch hidden by shadow, a meeting in gardens where no other gods walked. In Aphrodite's hidden garden, far from watchful eyes, the goddess of love taught the god of war what it meant to be gentle. And Ares, for whom tenderness had always meant weakness, discovered that being loved was more intoxicating than any victory in battle. She saw what others refused to see, that beneath the rage was a wounded creature desperate to be wanted. Beauty recognized the beast's pain. From their union came not only Phobos and Deimos, but also Eros in some tellings. Love itself born from war and beauty intertwined. Harmonia too was their daughter, harmony born from discord and desire. Even the universe acknowledged that their union created balance. But Olympus thrives on secrets, and secrets never stay buried. Helios, the sun who sees all things, watched their meetings with burning eyes. The sun told Hephaestus of his wife's betrayal, and the smith god, gentle no longer, began to plan a revenge worthy of the forge. But that vengeance would come later. First, let us speak of the world where Ares found his only true purpose. The battlefield itself. The ancient world was never at peace. Kingdoms rose and fell. Heroes sought glory, and always Ares was there to drink his fill. Troy, that great walled city where Greeks and Trojans fought for 10 long years. Here Ares walked among mortals, choosing sides by whim. He favored the Trojans mostly, fighting beside Hector and his brothers, reveling in the slaughter that never seemed to end. But gods are fickle, and Ares would switch sides when the battle seemed too one-sided. He craved conflict, not conclusion. The mortals never knew which way his spear would turn. They could only pray and fight, and die while immortals played their games above. In Thrace, the wild lands north of Greece, Ares was worshipped most fervently. These fierce people understood the god of pure violence. The Thracians painted themselves for battle, screamed songs of bloodlust, and died gloriously in Ares' name. He loved them as much as he could love. Sparta too honored him, though they also respected Athena's strategy. The Spartans understood that both gods had their place in achieving victory. Across the Greek world, wherever blood was shed in anger, Ares found sustenance. War was his feast, and humanity his endless provider. Yet for all his power, for all the fear he inspired, Ares carried a secret wound. He needed to matter, and his family denied him that need. What good is strength that everyone despises? What value has power that earns only contempt? These questions haunted him through immortal centuries. He raged harder, fought fiercer, hoping that enough glory would finally force respect. But violence cannot heal the wounds it creates. Only in Aphrodite's arms did the rage quiet. Only with his mother's blessing did he feel peace. Two women in a universe of rejection. This was the god who would face humiliations beyond bearing, imprisoned by giants, caught in the act of love, wounded by a mere mortal. His story is not of triumph but of tragedy repeated. A god who could destroy armies, but could not win his father's simplest approval. Soon we shall witness his greatest shame. 13 months trapped in a bronze jar by arrogant twins who thought they could challenge heaven. The Elode they were called. Otis and Ephialtes, sons of Poseidon who grew 9 inches every year and dreamed of conquering the gods themselves. They were young and foolish and powerful beyond mortal measure. They planned to stack mountains to reach Olympus and claim goddesses as their brides. And Ares, foolish Ares, confronted them alone, the god of war against 2 giants who feared nothing, not even the divine. We shall see how that battle ended. With the war god bound and stuffed into a bronze jar, screaming and forgotten for over a year. Then we shall follow his desperate love affair with Aphrodite to its scandalous conclusion. Trapped in golden net before all Olympus. And finally, we shall stand with him on the fields of Troy when a mortal man, blessed by Athena, drives his spear into divine flesh. Each humiliation drives Ares back to his father's throne. Each time he begs for help, for justice, for love. Each time he is denied. This is why the Greeks told his stories. To understand that even gods can be trapped in cycles of pain they cannot escape. Perhaps they saw themselves in Ares, children unworthy in their parents' eyes, lovers unable to be faithful, warriors who win battles but lose everything else. Now you know who walks beside us tonight. A god of terrible power and terrible weakness. A creature of war who only wanted peace. Come then, let us witness his trials and his triumphs, such as they were. The moon rises, and ancient Greece awaits our footsteps. Our first trial begins in the age before Troy, when 2 giants decided they would challenge the gods themselves and reshape the cosmos. Otis and Ephialtes were their names, twin sons of Poseidon, born of a mortal woman, but inheriting their father's impossible strength. Each year they grew 9 inches taller, 9 inches broader. By their 9th year, they stood taller than any mortal structure ever built. Their stepmother Erebouia watched with growing terror. She had raised them, loved them, but now she feared what they were becoming. The twins spoke openly of their ambitions. They would stack mountain upon mountain until they could storm Olympus itself and claim their birthright. We shall take Hera for one of us, Otis declared, and Artemis for the other. The goddesses will be our brides whether they will it or not. Ephialtes laughed at his brother's boldness. Together they began their impossible work, uprooting mountains with their bare hands. Pelion they placed upon Ossa. Ossa they dragged toward Olympus. The earth itself groaned beneath their labors, and the gods took notice. Zeus watched from his throne, amused at first, then concerned. These were Poseidon's sons. He could not simply destroy them without consequence. The sea god himself seemed unwilling to stop his offspring. Perhaps he enjoyed watching his brother's realm threatened. Divine families are complicated. Ares saw opportunity where others saw only danger. Here were enemies worthy of the war god, giants who feared nothing, not even Olympus. If he defeated these titans alone, surely Zeus would finally acknowledge his worth. Surely his father would see his strength and be proud. Without consulting the other gods, without strategy or allies, Ares descended from Olympus to face the Elode twins in single combat. His chariot touched earth in Thessaly, where the giants had made their stronghold among the displaced mountains. The ground still trembled from their work.
Giants!
His voice thundered across the valley. You dare threaten Olympus? Face the god of war and learn the price of arrogance. Otis and Ephialtes emerged from their crude fortress, and for the first time, Ares understood the scale of what he faced. They towered above even a god. The twins looked down at Ares and laughed, a sound like avalanches colliding. A god comes to us.
We shall add him to our collection!
Ares attacked with all his fury, spear blazing with divine fire, war cry shaking the mountains. He was fast, he was powerful, he was outmatched. His spear struck Ephialtes' chest and bounced away. The giant barely flinched, looking down at the scratch as if a mosquito had bitten him. Otis swung a tree torn from the earth, catching Ares across the chest. The war god flew backward, crashing through stone outcroppings. Before he could rise, Ephialtes was upon him, massive foot pinning the god of war to the ground like an insect beneath a boot. Ares struggled with all his immortal strength. He raged, he screamed, he burned with divine fire. The giants simply pressed harder and laughed. We need chains, Otis observed calmly. Chains that can hold a god. Brother, fetch the bronze jar we prepared for greater prey. Ephialtes returned dragging a massive bronze vessel, large enough to hold a man, enchanted strong enough to imprison immortal flesh. They bound Ares in chains of bronze, each link thick as a mortal's arm. The war god fought every moment, never accepting his defeat. Into the jar they forced him, folding his divine form into cramped darkness. The lid sealed with a sound like a tomb closing. Darkness, absolute and eternal. The god of war, who had never known confinement, now knew nothing else. He screamed, but bronze absorbed the sound. Days passed. Weeks Ares lost track of time in his metal tomb. His rage never dimmed, but his hope began to flicker and fade. Surely the gods would notice his absence. Surely someone would come. Surely his father would send a rescue for his own son. But Olympus was strangely quiet about the war god's disappearance. Some noticed. Few cared. The halls seemed more peaceful without his fury. Zeus knew, of course. The king of gods knows all that happens in his realm. But he made no move to free his most hated son. Only Hera demanded answers. Only the mother raged at her husband's cold dismissal.
He is your son, our son.
How can you abandon him? Zeus waved away her concern. The boy was foolish. Let him learn from his mistakes. A few months in darkness may teach him wisdom. A few months became more. The jar held, the giants gloated, and the god of war slowly began to understand true despair. Inside, Ares had stopped screaming. He had stopped fighting. He sat in darkness and wondered if anyone would ever come for him at all. He thought of Aphrodite, of her warmth and her acceptance. Did she wonder where he had gone? Did she mourn his absence? He thought of his mother, fierce Hera, who alone among the gods truly loved him. Was she fighting for his freedom even now? Month after month passed. 13 months would be the count before his ordeal ended. An eternity for a god unused to helplessness. Above him, the giants continued their plans, stacking mountains ever higher, confident that no god would dare challenge them now. Their stepmother Erebia watched their madness with growing horror. These were not the boys she had raised. They had become monsters. She had heard the god's screams from the jar, back when he still screamed. The silence now was worse. Something had to change. Areboia was no hero, no warrior, no goddess. She was simply a woman who could not bear to see cruelty continue unopposed. She prayed to Hermes, the messenger, the guide of souls, the god who moved between worlds. "Please," she whispered. "Someone must know. Someone must help." Hermes heard. The swift god, always curious, always moving, descended to the mortal woman's humble home with questions on his tongue. "You call with urgency, mortal woman. What could trouble you so greatly that you would summon the gods to this remote place?" Areboia told him everything. The giants' ambitions, their defiance of Olympus, and the god they kept imprisoned in bronze for over a year. Hermes' expression changed from curiosity to alarm. Ares, brutal, despised Ares, but still an Olympian. Still one of them. This could not stand. "Show me," he commanded. And together the mortal woman and the swift god approached the stronghold where the Allodae kept their divine prisoner. The giants were away, continuing their mountain work. The stronghold stood nearly empty, guarded only by the arrogance of those who feared nothing. Hermes found the jar and pressed his ear to the bronze. Silence within. He feared he might be too late, that even a god could fade. A breath. A whisper of divine essence still clinging to existence. Ares lived, barely, his spirit guttering like a candle in wind. Hermes worked quickly, divine fingers finding the seals the giants had placed, unraveling their crude magic with Olympian skill. The lid fell away. Light poured in. And Ares, god of war, looked up at his rescuer with eyes that had forgotten hope could exist. Hermes reached down and grasped his brother's arm. "Come, war god. This prison holds you no longer. Olympus awaits." Ares emerged into light he had not seen for 13 months. He was weakened, diminished, but alive. And fury was already rebuilding in his heart. "The giants," he rasped, voice hoarse from screaming and silence. "Where are the giants? I will tear them apart with my bare hands." Hermes shook his head. "Not yet, brother. You are weak. Return to Olympus, recover. The giants will face justice in time." Ares wanted to argue, to fight, to kill. But his body betrayed him. 13 months had taken their toll even on immortal flesh. Hermes carried the war god from that place, ascending toward Olympus on swift wings, leaving Areboia to face whatever consequences might come. The giants would later be destroyed, tricked by Artemis into killing each other with their own spears. But that is another tale for another night. Our concern now is Ares' return to Olympus, not as conquering hero but as rescued prisoner, not in glory but in shame. Hermes brought him before the assembled gods. Ares stood, barely stood, before his family, waiting for words of comfort that would never come. Athena regarded him with cold gray eyes. Apollo looked away in discomfort. Artemis showed nothing. Only Aphrodite seemed pained by his state. Hera rushed to her son, gathering him in her arms, weeping for his suffering. A mother's love, unashamed before the entire court. "My son, my poor son," she whispered. "What have they done to you? What has been allowed to be done to you?" Zeus remained on his throne, watching the scene with an expression that could have been carved from the mountain itself. Cold, unmoved, judging. Ares pulled away from his mother's arms. He had not come for comfort. He had come for something far more important. Justice, acknowledgement, love. He approached his father's throne on unsteady legs, each step a declaration. 13 months of darkness had not broken him. Not entirely. "Father." The word was an accusation. "I was imprisoned for 13 months, tortured by giants who threaten your own throne. Where was my rescue?" Zeus' expression did not change. "You attacked alone, without strategy, without allies. You lost. The consequences were your own making, not mine to remedy." "I am your son." Ares' voice cracked with 13 months of suppressed anguish. "Does that mean nothing? Does blood not bind you to care? You are violence without purpose." Zeus replied, voice like distant thunder. "Chaos without meaning. Why should I risk Olympus for what I find worthless?" The throne room fell silent. Even the gods who despised Ares winced at their king's cruelty. This was not discipline. This was destruction. Ares stood before his father, tears cutting through the grime of his imprisonment. The god of war wept before all of Olympus. Hera stepped forward, positioning herself between husband and son. Her eyes blazed with fury that matched any storm Zeus could summon. "You go too far," she hissed at the king of gods. "Mock him if you must, but remember, he is mine as much as yours." Zeus met her gaze. Something passed between them. Old arguments, ancient wounds, the complicated history of gods who cannot escape each other. Finally Zeus looked away, not conceding, never conceding, but choosing not to escalate. "Heal him then, wife. I have spoken my piece." Hera gathered her son once more, leading him from the throne room. Behind them, whispers began, the endless gossip of the immortals. In her private chambers, Hera healed Ares' body with divine power. But the wounds his father had opened could not be closed so easily. "Why does he hate me?" Ares asked, the question of a child despite his eternal age. "What must I do to make him see my worth?" Hera had no answer that would comfort. She held him instead, letting her presence be the answer that words could not provide. Days passed. Ares recovered his strength, but not his spirit. He haunted Olympus like a ghost, avoiding his father's gaze and his siblings' whispers. Only one place offered solace. Only one person saw him as something more than the god of meaningless violence. Aphrodite waited in her garden. She found him there, standing among her roses, still carrying the weight of his father's words. She did not speak. She simply took his hand. In her arms, Ares found what he could not find on any throne or battlefield. The simple knowledge that someone wanted him to exist. The god of war and the goddess of love, opposite forces finding balance in each other. For now this was enough. This was everything. But remember, Helios sees all and Hephaestus already knows. This peace would not last. New storms were gathering on Olympus' horizon. The first climax of our tale concludes. Ares freed from giants, rejected by his father, finding solace in forbidden love. But the next trial approaches. Rest here a moment. Feel where we have been. The bronze darkness, the throne room's cold, the garden's warmth. More awaits when you are ready. For a time the garden was enough. Ares healed in Aphrodite's arms, letting her love mend what his father's words had torn. She asked no questions about his imprisonment. She demanded no strength he could not give. She simply loved him as he was, broken and burning. Days became weeks. The lovers grew careless, meeting more often, staying longer, forgetting that Olympus has 1,000 watching eyes. Helios, the all-seeing sun, had watched from the beginning. Now he grew tired of holding a secret that begged to be told. Some say he acted from righteousness. Others claim spite drove him, jealousy of love he could never share. The sun sees all but touches nothing. He descended to Hephaestus' forge, where the smith god labored over marvels that would outlast civilizations. "Brother, I bring news you will not welcome." Hephaestus listened. His hammer fell silent. The forge fires themselves seemed to dim as comprehension settled over the lame god's gentle face. His wife, the goddess he had loved since Zeus arranged their marriage, the beauty he had crafted countless treasures for, with Ares of all gods. Not a king. Not even another craftsman, the brute, the mindless god of violence. She had chosen violence over tenderness. Helios departed satisfied with mischief made. Behind him, Hephaestus sat alone among his creations, and something fundamental shifted in his divine heart. The smith god had always been patient, forgiving, gentle. Now another quality emerged, the cold precision of a craftsman planning his greatest work. He would not confront them with rage. He would not challenge Ares to combat he could not win. He would use his only advantage, his genius. For days he worked in secret, dismissing even his mechanical servants. What he crafted required concentration beyond anything he had attempted before. Gold, pure and divine, he drew into threads thinner than spider silk. Each strand could hold the weight of mountains, yet remained invisible to divine eyes. He wove these threads into a net of such delicate complexity that light itself could not find purchase upon its surface. A trap made of patience and pain. Into the weave he poured his heartbreak. Every slight, every longing look Aphrodite gave to others, every night she turned away from his touch. The net would not kill. That was not its purpose. It would hold. It would expose. It would shame those who had shamed him before all of Olympus. He tested it once, dropping the net upon a bronze statue. It fell like whispered secrets and held like divine law. Nothing could escape its embrace. Now came the delicate part, placing the trap without being discovered. Hephaestus limped toward Aphrodite's chambers with a husband's knowledge of her patterns. She was away, of course. With him. The smith god entered his own marriage bed's chamber and began to arrange his masterwork above it. He suspended the net from the bedposts, from the ceiling, from points invisible even to gods. When sprung, it would fall like judgment itself. The trigger was simple. The weight of two bodies on the bed, his bed, their bed. The bed they had desecrated with their betrayal. When finished, Hephaestus stood back and surveyed his work. Nothing visible, nothing to warn, only inevitability waiting to unfold. He announced to Olympus that he was traveling to Lemnos, his sacred island. Smithing work, he said, repairs to mortal temples. He would be gone for days. Word reached the lovers quickly. The lame husband gone, the marriage bed empty, opportunity calling like a siren's song across divine waters. Ares came to her that night, armor discarded, warrior become lover. They had grown bold in their secrecy, and boldness would betray them. Aphrodite welcomed him with joy, pulling him toward the bed that had witnessed their passion so many times before. One more time, they thought, one more stolen night. They fell together onto silken sheets, lost in each other, blind to everything but desire. Above them, invisible threads trembled at the disturbance. Somewhere between one kiss and the next, the trap sprung. Golden threads fell like divine judgment, wrapping, binding, exposing before either could react. And far away, on Lemnos where he had never actually gone, Hephaestus smiled. Now the real humiliation would begin. Now all Olympus would witness. Trapped in threads of gold, Ares and Aphrodite struggled against bonds that would not yield. The more they fought, the tighter the net held. What is this? Ares roared, his battle strength meaningless against craft beyond his comprehension. What sorcery holds the god of war? Aphrodite knew. Even before she saw the craftsmanship, she recognized her husband's work. Only Hephaestus could weave chains from heartbreak and gold. They waited in that tangle of limbs and golden threads, knowing that discovery was coming. Hephaestus had not built this trap to let them escape unseen. Dawn came. Hephaestus returned to Olympus with purpose in his uneven step, heading straight for the throne room where the gods gathered. Father Zeus, his voice rang clear and bitter. Brother gods, I have something to show you. Come see what happens in my own marriage bed. The gods followed, some with concern, others with barely hidden delight. Divine scandals were the finest entertainment Olympus could offer. Through marble corridors they walked, a procession of divine judgment heading toward the chamber, where two trapped gods awaited their shame. Hephaestus threw open the doors to Aphrodite's chamber. Morning light streamed in, illuminating the bed, where the golden net held its prizes. There they lay, the goddess of love and the god of war, tangled together in threads of gold, unable to move, unable to hide, unable to deny. For a moment, silence held. Then Hermes laughed, quick and bright and inappropriate. The sound broke something, and suddenly everyone was speaking at once. Apollo smiled his golden smile and murmured to Hermes, "Would you trade places with Ares, brother?" Trapped with the goddess of beauty herself. Hermes replied too loudly, gladly, even with the chains. 3 times the chains. The male gods laughed. The goddesses had already turned away in disgust. Athena's gray eyes found Ares through the crowd. In them he saw not shock but confirmation. She had always known he would fail like this. Ares could not meet her gaze. He who feared nothing on the battlefield found he could not face his sister's silent contempt in this bed. Aphrodite wept, not from shame alone, but from the cruelty of exposure. Her beauty, always her shield, now made her humiliation more complete. Hephaestus watched it all with an expression that had forgotten how to feel. He had wanted this. Now that he had it, the victory tasted like ash. Zeus observed from the back of the crowd, his expression unreadable. Another embarrassment from his most embarrassing son. Another moment to endure. Release them, Zeus finally commanded. This spectacle has gone on long enough. Hephaestus, you have made your point. Now let it end. Hephaestus stood firm. Not until I am paid. Ares has defiled my marriage. Let someone pay the bride price for his release, or let him rot. Poseidon stepped forward, ever the diplomat between his brothers. I will guarantee the debt. Release them, Smith, and Ares will pay what is owed. Hephaestus considered, then nodded. With a gesture, the golden net dissolved like morning mist, freeing the lovers from their golden prison. Aphrodite fled without looking back, disappearing toward her sacred island of Cyprus, where she might hide from the memory of this shame. Ares stood slowly, gathering what dignity remained to him. The gods parted before him, not in respect, but as one avoids something distasteful. He walked from that chamber with his head high, though inside something had broken that would never quite heal. Another humiliation. Another scar. Behind him, laughter followed. It would follow him for centuries. The god of war caught in his lover's bed, helpless as any mortal. Ares did not return to Olympus for a long time after that day. He roamed battlefields, seeking in war what he could not find in love or family. Wars came and went. Kingdoms rose and fell. Ares drank his fill of blood and glory, but the emptiness remained beneath the rage. Then came Troy, the war that would define an age. The great walled city under siege by all the Greeks. A feast that would last 10 years. Every god chose a side in that conflict. Aphrodite, Ares, Apollo, they favored Troy. Athena, Hera, Poseidon, they backed the Greeks. Olympus itself was at war. Ares descended to fight alongside Hector and his Trojan brothers. Here was war worthy of a god. Heroes on both sides, glory for the taking. He waded through Greek soldiers like a scythe through wheat, his presence turning battles, his war cry breaking formations that had never known fear. For a time, it seemed the Trojans might win through Ares' strength alone. The Greek heroes fell back, unable to stand against divine fury. But across the battlefield, Athena watched with calculating eyes. Her Greeks were losing, and she would not permit her brother to have this victory. Diomedes, king of Argos, a mortal hero whose courage bordered on madness. A man willing to strike at gods themselves. I will give you sight to see the gods among the mortals. Athena whispered. And I will give you the strength to strike them without fear. Diomedes felt power surge through him. Mortal flesh housing divine blessing. He could see now what others could not. He could see Ares. The hero charged toward the god of war without hesitation. Around him, men died in their hundreds, but Diomedes had eyes only for his divine prey. Ares saw him coming, a mortal running toward a god with raised spear. The war god laughed. What could any mortal do against divine flesh? He did not see Athena standing invisible beside the Greek hero. He did not see her hand guiding the mortal's spear toward its target. Diomedes threw with all his mortal strength, enhanced by divine blessing. The spear flew true, truer than any mortal weapon had right to fly. The bronze point struck Ares in the belly, piercing divine flesh that had never known a mortal wound. Ichor, the golden blood of gods, sprayed across the dust. Ares screamed. The sound was terrible, like 10,000 warriors dying at once. The battlefield itself seemed to shudder at the god of war's pain. He fell to his knees, clutching the wound, staring at the mortal who had done what no mortal should be able to do. Behind Diomedes, Athena became visible. Sister. Ares gasped, golden blood running through his fingers. You guided his hand. You turned mortal bronze against your own brother's flesh. Athena smiled her cold gray smile. You were winning. I could not allow that. War has rules, brother. Your chaos threatened the outcome I designed. Ares rose on shaking legs, the spear wound still pouring ichor. He could heal, given time. But time was the one thing he did not have here. The Trojans watched their divine champion falter. The Greeks saw opportunity. The tide of battle was turning again, as tides always turn. Ares did what he had never done before in any war. He fled. Wrapping himself in storm clouds, the god of war retreated from a mortal battlefield. He flew toward Olympus, not in triumph, but in desperate need. His father's healing power was the only thing that could close a wound blessed by Athena. He landed before Zeus' throne, collapsing to his knees, golden blood pooling on sacred marble. Once again, he came to his father wounded and humiliated. "Feather," he gasped. "Look what she has done. Athena guided a mortal's hand against me. Your daughter wounds your son. Is this just?" Zeus looked down at his bleeding son. In his eyes was not concern, not anger at Athena, not anything Ares had hoped to find there. "Do not sit beside me and whine." Zeus spoke, his voice thunder and ice combined. "You are the most hateful to me of all the gods who hold Olympus." The words struck harder than any spear. Ares had heard them before, but always hoped they might change. They never changed. They never would. "Forever is strife dear to your heart," Zeus continued, relentless. "Wars and battles. You have your mother's nature. Here is intolerable spirit of contention." Other gods watched from their thrones, some uncomfortable, some satisfied. Ares saw Athena's cold smile, Apollo's averted eyes, Hermes' pity worst of all. "If you were born of any other god," Zeus finished, "you would have been cast out of Olympus long ago. Lower even than the Titans I defeated." Ares knelt in his own divine blood, receiving his father's rejection before all Olympus. The god of war had nothing left to say. What words could answer hate? Zeus waved his hand. "Pain, heal him. I cannot bear his suffering any more than I can bear his presence. Heal him and let him go." The divine physician came, applying herbs that could close wounds even Athena's blessing had opened. The flesh healed. The heart did not. When the healing was done, Ares rose without thanking anyone. He walked from the throne room, and not one god spoke a word to him as he passed. Only Hera moved. She rose from her throne and followed her son, leaving Zeus without a word, choosing her child over her husband's cold judgment. In a private chamber, away from witnesses, Hera held her son as she had held him since his creation. "Some wounds only a mother can tend." "He is wrong," Hera whispered fiercely. "He is wrong about you. You are not worthless. You are my son, and there is strength in you he will never see." Ares wanted to believe her. He had always wanted to believe her. But his father's voice was louder, carved into his immortal soul like wounds that never heal. "Why?" he asked, the same question he had asked for eternity. "Why does he hate what I am when he made me this way?" Hera had no answer. Perhaps Zeus hated in Ares what he hated in himself. Perhaps gods are as broken as the mortals who worship them. Below on the plains of Troy, the war continued without the god of war. Greeks and Trojans killed each other for 10 more years. Ares returned eventually, unable to stay away from conflict's call. But he fought more carefully now, aware that even gods could bleed. Troy fell at last to Greek cunning, the wooden horse that Athena inspired. Strategy won where strength alone had failed. As always, she triumphed over him. Ares watched the city burn and felt nothing. Not joy, not sorrow, not even the thrill of destruction. Only emptiness where purpose should have been. The Trojan War ended, and heroes returned home to their own fates. Odysseus wandered for 10 years. Agamemnon was murdered. Even victors pay prices. Ares endured, as gods do. Time passed differently for the divine. Centuries flowing like water, wounds becoming scars, scars becoming memories, memories becoming mythology. He would always be the god of war. Mortals would always pray to him in fear and fight in his name. But he would never be loved by his father. This was the tragedy of Ares. Not that he was defeated, but that he could never win the only victory he truly wanted. A father's acceptance. Aphrodite came to him still, when she could. Their love continued in shadows, though both now bore scars from its exposure. Together they were broken things finding comfort in each other's breaking. Not perfect love, but perhaps the only love either could have. Hera never stopped defending her son, even as millennia turned. In every conflict between Zeus and his war god child, she stood for Ares. Perhaps that was the lesson hidden in his myths. That even gods need someone who loves them without condition. Even divine creatures need mothers. Ares never changed his nature. He remained god of brutal, meaningless war, the screaming chaos that makes mortals into beasts and heroes into corpses. But in the quiet moments between wars, in Aphrodite's arms or Hera's presence, glimpses of another Ares appeared, one who might have been gentle if given the chance. The Greeks told his stories to understand themselves, the violence they were capable of, the rejection they feared, the love they desperately needed. Every child who felt unloved by a parent could look to Ares and know they were not alone. Even gods could be rejected. Even immortals could weep. Every warrior who survived battle's horror could understand why Ares was as he was. Violence changes those who practice it, mortal or divine. And every lover caught in forbidden passion could feel Ares and Aphrodite's tragedy. Wanting what you should not have, suffering for wanting. This is why we remember him, not as the victor he wished to be, but as the struggling creature he was. Failure can be its own kind of immortality. The final climax of our tale arrives here, not with victory, but with understanding. Ares was never meant to win. He was meant to teach us about losing. Rest now with what we have witnessed: the bronze jar, the golden net, the mortal spear, the father's rejection, the mother's love that could not fix what it could not reach. Soon we will speak of what Ares meant to those who first told his tales. But for now, let the god of war rest, and rest with him. Now let us speak of what Ares meant to those who first shaped his stories. The ancient Greeks knew war intimately. It defined their world. Every Greek man was expected to fight. Every Greek city lived under threat from neighbors, from Persia, from the endless tide of human conflict. They needed gods of war, but they created two very different ones. Athena for the war they wished to fight. Ares for the war they actually experienced. Athena represented strategic victory, the kind won through planning, discipline, and minimal loss. She was war as it appeared in epic poetry and proud memory. Ares represented the truth beneath the glory. The screaming, the bleeding, the friends dying in your arms, the enemy who was someone's son. The Greeks honored Athena with temples and festivals. They honored Ares with fear and desperate sacrifice. Both responses were honest in their way. Sparta alone embraced Ares fully, chaining his statue so the spirit of war could never leave their city. They understood that war requires the beast. But even Spartans knew the cost. Their greatest warriors' returned changed. Harder, colder, haunted by what they had done and seen. War takes as much as it gives. Ares embodied that transformation. He showed what happens when violence becomes identity, when there is nothing left but the next battle, the next kill. His rejection by Zeus spoke to another Greek truth, that society fears its warriors even as it needs them. The sword that protects can also threaten. Veterans of war often felt what Ares felt, essential in crisis, unwelcome in peace. Heroes on the battlefield, strangers at the hearth. The myths gave these feelings divine form. If even a god could be rejected for his violent nature, mortal warriors could understand their own alienation. Beyond war, Ares' story speaks to something universal: the child who cannot win a parent's love, no matter what they achieve or become. Zeus' contempt was absolute and unexplained. He simply did not love what Ares was. Some parents are like that, unable to love what they cannot understand. The Greeks understood this cruelty because they lived it. Not every father loved his sons. Not every family was whole. The myths reflected real pain. Hera's fierce maternal love offered counterbalance. Proof that even the rejected can find someone who sees their worth. Mothers often save what fathers abandon. The affair with Aphrodite carried its own symbolic weight. Why would beauty choose the beast? The Greeks pondered this paradox endlessly. Perhaps they understood that love is not logical. That attraction pulls us toward what we should avoid. That passion ignores the warnings wisdom whispers. Aphrodite was married to craft and kindness in Hephaestus. She chose war and danger in Ares. The heart wants what the heart wants, even divine hearts. Hephaestus' revenge showed another truth, that the gentle can become cruel when wounded deeply enough. Patience is not immunity. Kindness can curdle into vengeance. The golden net was genius turned to cruelty. The same skill that made wonders now made a trap. Our gifts can serve any master, even our pain. Public humiliation before the gods spoke to Greek society's power of shame. Reputation mattered more than almost anything. To be exposed was to be destroyed. Ares survived the exposure, but something died in him that day. The Greeks knew that shame could kill, even when the body continued breathing. The wound from Diomedes carried perhaps the deepest meaning. A mortal, with divine help, could wound a god. The impossible was possible with the right blessing. This gave hope to every Greek who faced impossible odds. If a man could wound the god of war, what other miracles might determined mortals achieve? But Athena's role reminded them that such miracles required divine favor. Mortals could achieve greatly, but never alone. The gods still held the scales. Together these threads wove a tapestry of meaning: war's horror, family's cruelty, love's irrationality, shame's power, mortal potential, divine necessity. The Greeks told Ares stories not to celebrate him, but to understand themselves. He was a mirror reflecting what they feared becoming, what they already were. Every culture needs its shadow gods, deities embodying what we wish we were not. Ares served that purpose. He carried the darkness so others could feel light. This was his meaning to those who created him. Now let us see how his story traveled through time, changing as it went, finding new forms in new ages. When Rome conquered Greece, they captured more than territory. They captured the gods themselves, transforming them to serve a new empire's needs. Ares became Mars, and in becoming Mars, he underwent a transformation more profound than any he had experienced in Greek mythology. Where Greeks had despised Ares, Romans elevated Mars to second only behind Jupiter himself. The war god became father of their entire civilization. Legend told that Mars fathered Romulus and Remus, the twin founders of Rome. The god of war was literally the ancestor of every Roman citizen. Romans built temples to Mars throughout their empire. The Campus Martius, Field of Mars, stood at Rome's heart, where soldiers trained and citizens gathered. March itself bears his name, the month when campaigning season began, when Roman legions would march forth to expand the empire Mars had fathered. Tuesday carries his legacy too, named for the Norse god Tyr, who Romans equated with Mars. Every week, we unknowingly honor the war god. When astronomers named the red planet, they chose Mars, the blood-red wanderer in the night sky, fitting home for the god of bloodshed. Today, spacecraft bearing human ambition orbit and land on Mars. We have sent our machines to walk on war god's domain, seeking life among the rust. The word martial flows from Mars. Martial arts, martial law, court martial. Every discipline of organized combat carries his ancient name. Artists through the centuries have painted Ares and Mars countless times. Botticelli showed him sleeping in Aphrodite's presence, conquered by love. Velázquez painted Mars resting, weary and melancholy, showing the exhaustion behind the violence. Even the god of war grows tired of war. Modern stories continue drawing from his well. Every tale of the warrior rejected by society, the violent hero who cannot find peace, echoes Ares. Video games cast players as gods of war, letting us feel what Ares felt. The power, the rage, and sometimes the emptiness beneath the glory. Films about soldiers returning from war often capture Ares' tragedy. heroes celebrated for violence, unable to exist in the peace they fought to protect. The unloved child seeking parental approval appears everywhere in modern storytelling. We cannot escape the patterns eras first embodied thousands of years ago. His story persists because it speaks to something unchanging in human experience. We still fear war. We still need warriors. We still struggle to love them. Eras lives on. In our words, our planets, our stories, our families. The brutal god of war remains with us, waiting in the shadows of human nature. And so we come to the end of our journey with Ares, the brutal god of war who was also the wounded son, the desperate lover, the eternal seeker. We walked with him through the bronze darkness of his prison, where 13 months taught him what helplessness felt like. Feel how far we have come. We witnessed his shame in the golden net, exposed before all Olympus, learning that even gods can be caught by the consequences of their hearts. We stood beside him when mortal bronze pierced divine flesh, and when his father's words cut deeper than any spear ever could. Through it all, two loves sustained him: Aphrodite's forbidden passion and Hera's fierce maternal devotion. Even in darkness, connection remained. The ancient Greeks who first told these tales knew something profound, that stories of divine suffering help us bear our mortal pain. They shaped Ares from their fears and their experiences, giving form to what they could not otherwise express. We honor their wisdom tonight. Across 3,000 years, their voices still reach us. The poets, the priests, the parents who told these tales to children just like you. Now the stories rest in you, carried forward into dreams and waking. You have become part of the ancient chain that keeps mythology alive. Let the god of war find peace tonight, and let peace find you as well. The battles are over. The stories are told. Only rest remains. The stars turn above as they turned above ancient Greece. The same moon that silvered Olympus now silvers your window. We are all connected through time. Thank you for walking with us tonight. Sleep well, dream gently, and know that the ancient stories will be here whenever you need them. Good night.